All right. Awesome. We are live. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining, and everybody who's been waiting. Today we have with us industrial designer Fed Rios, and he is going to show us some of his process and tell us about his journey and just get a look into some of his work. So if you're new to the channel or new to Gravity Sketch, this is something that we do every Thursday where we interview someone from the community or the design community at large and look at their work and give people a chance to get more information about the design world, get inspiration, anything. And so my name is Jaron Dorman, and I'm the design community manager here at Gravity Sketch. And basically I just connect Gravity Sketch with the community. So thank you very much for joining, and I will shoot it over to Fed Rios to introduce himself and tell, if you could just tell a little bit, everybody, about who you are.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Fed. I'm an industrial design consultant, and I work with hardware companies and some startups to help them, visualize their product design ideas and then get those products ready for launch. So anything on the product development stage. My work at the time is mainly centered around the cycling and outdoor industries, most of my clients. But I'm also doing some work with some lifestyle products, some consumer electronics, and lately some mobility and robotics projects as well. That's what I've been working on over the past 2 years or so. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I've been following your work. Actually, I don't think I even told you this, but I've been following your work actually for a minute.
Thank you.
Probably the past year. And so it's been really cool to see like all the stuff you've been doing, and we'll get into the work that you've been doing recently. And and actually one of the things that I think caught my eye for sure, and I think a lot of people in the community as well, is like your augmented reality stuff as well, which has been really super cool to see. So,
for sure.
Well, thank you again, Fed, for joining us. I'm going to. I want to also just mention to everybody that's watching, feel free to ask questions throughout the live. Anytime I'll get a chance, I can shoot the question over to Fed, and he can answer to the best of his ability. And so, don't hesitate to make comments or ask questions.
Cool.
But yeah, so, well, I'll just start it off with asking you, Fed, what has brought you to the world of design? What was sort of your journey into now? I know it's kind of a big question, but if you could sort of summarize for us, what was your introduction?
For sure. So when I was thinking about this question, I can say that I have a little bit of an unfair advantage. My dad is actually an industrial designer. So I got introduced to the field super young. My first memories of industrial design, I was probably 4 or 5 years old, so probably a little earlier than most. I know classmates and colleagues, their introduction to design story is usually first year of college or looking into what schools to apply to, and usually having an art background, sometimes an engineering background, or you can arrive at ID through many fields, but I knew about it since I was very young, all through middle school and high school. I think I knew I wanted to be an industrial designer. Yeah, I made up my mind in like sophomore year of high school or something like that, and just working on making my portfolio even in high school then to be able to get into a good ID school and for college. So
Wow.
that was one side of things. And then also on top of being a practicing designer, he was also an ID professor at a local college. So I was able to get exposed to student projects super early. I remember being a little kid and seeing college students work and seeing their prototypes and seeing their renderings and just being blown away by what a person could do in college. So I definitely wanted to go that route from very early on. Being influenced by my father like that on that kind of stuff was pretty amazing. And yeah, it gave me several years advantage to get acquainted to like how a designer works and what their tool sets are and how to use markers, right? And back then there wasn't a lot of digital sketching or digital tools that much. So yeah, it was pretty cool to have a early look into the profession and into the field.
Yeah, it's I can definitely relate, and so that's what's cool. You were really introduced early on, which it seems like people come through industrial design so many different ways and channels, and they sort of discover it or find it. But I can totally relate to that thing you said about being super excited about the sketches and just seeing that super inspirational work and just like, wow, I want to do that. And so, obviously, you're working you're using VR tools now and as part of your work. When did you discover VR? When was that? How was that process of discovering just even what VR was, and did you even see it as a tool when you discovered VR, or was it not until later when you discovered like creativity tools in VR? How was that process?
Cool. So yeah, let me answer that question. And I would say after I answer it, you want to go ahead and jump into the co-creation room, and then we can tackle the rest of it there.
Absolutely.
I think it would be cool to talk about the rest of the things while we're actually using the tools and showing everyone that's watching, or everyone that will watch later. But yeah, my story with VR is very new. I would say 2 years at most. Before that, it was just a very vague concept. I knew that VR headsets existed. That was probably it. I have to give big shout outs to Nick Baker. He started posting VR as a productivity tool back in like late 2018, I would say. That's when I started noticing it. And that's what I really saw it as a creativity tool, as a potential to have it. At that point, I'd never used the VR headset. I had never interacted with one. I didn't know what to do with it. But I just knew that there was a potential for it to be integrated into the world of design. So mid 2019 is when the Quest came out. I got one as soon as they were available. Jumped on it early. First app I got for sure was Gravity Sketch, and I wasn't too interested in the gaming aspect. I just really jumped into making stuff with it. And then the ability to, record yourself and share that content later with your audience has, also been really cool part of the process. Over the past few years, I've only not only been doing design work, but also finding ways to share it with the design community. And, Oculus has some really great built-in tools, and of course, Gravity Sketch as well, having, like the third person camera views and all these other things that we can do with it. So yeah, my build-up was, I started with just the Quest, which I would say is a pretty low barrier of entry, especially with the Quest 2 now being so much cheaper. Definitely much cheaper than like an iPad or a drawing tablet. So an introduction to a brand new technology is that much easier these days.
Yeah.
So I started with the Quest, then saw the possibilities that PCVR brought also, that, much more further than just the standalone headset, which I still use standalone all the time, but I wanted to have the option for both. And luckily, Oculus was pretty good to kind of develop the Oculus Link technology. So I built a PC, a CAD workstation built around VR capabilities, just so I can access that side of things. And after that is when I started really playing around with mixed reality recording and third-person cameras and external ways to blend those two worlds together to really show people what it looks like to be inside a VR environment. I think that's something that's still really hard to communicate. It was hard for me to grasp at first, but I'm just trying to show people that, yeah, once you see it, once you play with it, once you get it, it's just such an amazing tool to have as part of your disposal.
Amazing. Yeah, it's incredible. And if anybody's interested in seeing some of Fed's work that he's been doing with VR and augmented reality and all of that, you can check out his YouTube channel, and I've actually linked it in the description of this video, as well as his Instagram, so feel free to go check that out. But we are going to shift it over to VR now, where we go into co-creation and Gravity Sketch, and we are going to look at some of Fed's work, his models, some images, and we're going to continue on in there. So just give us a moment to switch over.
For sure. I'd say this is the next frontier of VR, is just being able to, where did you say you were? In Texas, right?
Yeah.
I'm in California, so we'll be able to get in the same room in a second.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
We'll catch you guys from there.
All right. Switching over now, jumping in. All right.
1 second. quick setup here.
All right.
To redraw a new boundary to cover my desk, just so everyone knows what I'm doing. Cool.
And so, just so everybody's just for everybody's information who's watching, this is a shared room. So again, like Fed just said, he's in California, I'm in Texas, and we are together in VR. And he's, brought in some models himself.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
So it's amazing. We're here almost physically together, and and so as you can see, I can start drawing something. He could take this stroke away and start editing it himself. So
people on the YouTube can see us in the co-creation room, right?
Yeah. So
Cool.
You'll see the little model of the camera over there. That's about where it's at. And just for your information, Fed, the limits of the camera is just outside the trees here. So
okay.
So
I'm good right here.
Yeah, you're good. You're
Cool.
good there. It's a little visually kind
Move
of
over.
hard. You might want to go more towards the middle where there's white space. Yeah, that's good.
Here we are.
And I'll still be able to monitor questions, everyone,
Cool.
in VR. So I'll be keeping my eye on that. So feel free to ask.
So I would say, yeah, for those not familiar, I'm in a co-creation room. I think Jaron, you built most of this environment, right? It's pretty nice
Yeah.
as far as interviews go. Get like the Eames looking chairs and a nice setup. So it really makes you feel like you're there next to the other person, which is pretty fantastic. And what I did to prepare for this is brought up some props and some, items for this room. Basically like my little studio icon. I'm gonna place that on the table. I have my studio dog, Chipita. This is a model that I made in Gravity Sketch early on, and this was a Christmas ornament that I gave out to some people last year. So basically, as just a design exercise for something other than products, I was doing organic shapes with the sub-D tool, and came up with my dog, and I was able to print her about this size and make it a Christmas ornament.
If you want to bring that over to the table too, I think so
Yeah.
people can see a little better. Yeah,
And
love it.
basically able to do the model, bring it into a CAD program, split it up into several pieces that I would 3D print in different colors, assembled it together, and brought it back into VR. So it's full circle. You can export out of here, but also bring models back in to do volumetric reviews and one-to-one reviews and scale. And that's something, we'll get into it, but the back and forth that I've been doing quite a bit with my professional work is doing quick ideation here, taking it to a CAD program to do, dimensioned modeling and other things that you do in traditional CAD. And then once we have full assemblies or full models, we bring them back into Gravity Sketch to review in full scale.
Yeah, that's what I'm really curious to see as you'll go into it. Is it seems like you really have a understanding of how to utilize the pipeline of ideating in VR and then using that information to continue on into physical, into the physical world. So
For sure.
That'll be really great to see.
Cool. So yeah, I'd like to get started, or unless there's any other questions that you have, or do we want to jump into projects?
Not
And I'll
quite
cover
yet.
some of the questions through the project workflow that I'll be talking about as well.
Yeah. Feel free to ask any questions, anyone, as Fed's presenting, and if there's a lull or break, I'll shoot them over to him. So
Cool.
Like,
So
take it
as I
away,
mentioned,
Ben.
cool. I mentioned before, I did 6 years in the cycling industry working for a bike company, and we did all the componentry that goes on a race bike, both mountain bike and road bikes. So one of the things that I transitioned into now is designing the actual bike frames. And one project that I really wanted to do to test the capabilities of Gravity Sketch was design my own bike frame. So this is one of the first things that I took to completion, and I'll walk you through that process a little bit here. So this was, I get back into that, a hardtail bike frame for mountain biking that I designed about 6 months ago, earlier this year, pre-quarantine. Put it here on the table so everyone can see it.
Yeah, that'll be good.
And this is one where I made all the volumes and forms in Gravity Sketch, then took it over into traditional CAD and did a lot of the assembly work to get the right accurate dimensions, the right cylindrical objects, and things where you really need more of the product development CAD tools for cutting and dimensioning and doing things that then a factory could use to make an actual prototype or an actual production unit. The stand, everything that's an actual dimension component, I did create in CAD, and I was doing it to see how accurate the Gravity Sketch model would be. And surprisingly to me, it's very easy to incorporate this into export it out of here and bring it into a CAD program on my computer, and have very accurate surfacing. One thing we can do is maybe change the finish. And maybe if I go into edit mode. Oh, okay, so since I brought this into CAD as like a full assembly, it's not really doing that at the moment. It's not really a subdue object anymore, I remember, but I do have some others that would be able to look into that. But yeah, one thing I can show you here is, as you're kind of inspecting and looking around the model, this was early on in the sub-D tool workflow and process, kind of adding before hard edges were incorporated and all that. So just very intuitively and really quickly, I was trying to figure out how to do, if we could do annotations here. Yeah, like, hard edges, like over there, and how to do surface transitions really nicely, and, blend more flatter surfacing with, edges over here with a little bit more organic areas, like down in the bottom bracket. So this was just a great experiment to, blend those surfacing tools that Gravity Sketch had, see how they really compare to more traditional CAD surfacing tools that I did, that I've been using, for years and years, and how they work together. And yeah, surprisingly, that they work seamlessly. So yeah, if we look over here at the head tube, for example, the Gravity Sketch surface that I exported was basically a closed surface, and I turned that into a solid model pretty quickly and was able to cut all these holes, make the right dimensions for the headset and all these other mechanical components that have actual dimensions to them, like these, the headset cups, everything that that is an existing part that has to interface with these models. I was able to just do that really quickly and put them all together. Same with the seat clamp back here. This part, that's something that I already had dimensioned, and I wanted to make sure that it interfaced with the frame easily. So that's one thing that I've been doing a lot. Objects that are more engineered or machined, or more solid models, I'll do in CAD, or I'll have the CAD library ready, and then really create the organic surfacing parts like the frame in Gravity Sketch and go back and forth.
So how did you, I'm just wondering how you got because this part was made in Gravity, right?
Yes.
So how'd you get that to exactly line up the way you wanted it with the clamp, or was that done in post somehow? How was that done?
The thing with Fusion 360 is that it has T-splines, which is very similar to subdivisional modeling. I think it's very, very close as far as the workflow goes. So if anything, I think I modeled the frame up to here.
I see.
And then did a blend going up to meet this internal dimension that I really needed to be exact.
Got it.
So there is definitely a combination of tools. Same thing with the blends to match these bearing cups to this inner surface.
Yeah.
If you look over here, that's a perfect circle.
Yeah.
On the inside surface. So, there's definitely a very cool combination of organic modeling with dimension modeling that you still need for production components and parts that will eventually be out in the real world.
That's fascinating. So you said you use Fusion 360 then for your parametric modeling then?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've been testing, what I have access to. Rhino is another one that has really good integration between sub-D surfaces, and the surfaces that Rhino gives me. Rhino I really like to use for surfacing since it's very, very kind of high-end surface modeler. That's not too expensive, and it allows me to, I think there's a Rhino plugin, right, for Gravity Sketch where I bring these in. No
yes,
problem.
There is.
So as far as integrating with CAD, that's been one of the easiest things that I've been able to accomplish with Gravity Sketch. That's one of the first things I tested. I didn't want to have all these models in VR just be theoretical. I did want to take them out into CAD and also 3D printing. I do quite a bit of the models here. I have to get 3D printed validation just to make sure I have a physical object to check after I do these. And so far, it's all been working really well.
Yeah, that's awesome. It seems like as long as your mesh is closed and there's no holes, then you can 3D print it.
Exactly.
And that's for everybody out there, because I know we've had some questions around that. How can I 3D print when I make in Gravity Sketch? The answer, as just Fed was just describing, is yes.
So a quick answer to that is I would export it out of here, usually as a OBJ, right? I think it's one of the export.
Yeah.
See what I can get, or depending on what version of Gravity Sketch you have, some of the other ones might have more options, but I think so far OBJ, as long as your CAD program accepts that file, then you can save it out of there as an STL or however you want to print it. It hasn't been really an issue for me. And one last thing I want to touch on this while we're at it is with the tool belt tools, the measuring tool that I have. Here's the measuring tape.
They won't be able to see you do it, but they can see me do it though.
Okay. If you want to pull it out. Basically, when I'm showing this model to other people with the measuring tape is maybe not 100% accurate, but the tolerance is close enough that, we can make sure that like do a one-to-one geometry check, kind of like making sure that, the model is in the right scale. There is no huge discrepancy or it's not twice as big. Right? So,
I'm gonna, group this, and I'm going to pull it closer over here so I can show everybody, because there's someone that said they couldn't see what we were talking about.
Okay.
And so earlier, just so we can show, we were talking about this opening here and how he was able to match that with the CAD software and Fusion 360, and so he made a transition from the surface here that was made in Gravity Sketch into and then brought it in Fusion and continued making that. And then
for that I use T-splines and matching a T-spline surface through a curve profile or a sketch profile. So you do have to be well versed in both CAD programs and just know what the tools of each allow you to do.
And then I just want to show everybody, just because this is closer now, that you can actually take this measuring tool here, and I can measure out the lengths of these piped parts here, and I can actually dimension out the sketch in real life. So anyway, just wanted to show people that up close.
Cool. Yeah, let's go back. Teleport back there.
Or we can just, if you want to, Fed, if there's something that's kind of small, don't be afraid to just scale it up super big and then just show it, like that. So that'll work
totally.
too.
Yeah, that's another thing. I love the unconstrained nature of scaling and making things big, just to really validate your ideas as you're working through them and thinking through them.
Yeah.
I like jumping in here to make quick volumes and quick 3D shapes that would take a ton of sketching and dimensioning to get in CAD. So I've been able to do full frames in under an hour sometimes, where even just to set up the right geometry in CAD, that takes longer than that sometimes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that's been one thing that, that there is less steps constraining your creative output than there usually are with CAD, that I've been noticing at least. Cool. Let me jump into another project here. So that was one of the first full bike frames that I did here in Gravity Sketch, just to really test out how the technologies would mesh. And the next one I have is one where I started, thinking more about component integration. And one thing I want to show you here is if we look at the combination of, I'm over here on the images, my sketch that led to this idea to a final keyshot rendering. to show the completed model after it was fully modeled and rendered out and all the parts split. Just really showing that I'm able to keep the design intent without too much sacrifice. At this point, there really wasn't too much that I wasn't able to do between the thought I had, the idea I really wanted to create, to, let me do like a highlighting thing. So yeah, I started here and ended up here. Yeah, and so there's really not much lost between going from, and to talk a little bit about that workflow, I started by having a dimension geometry. So, making sure that all the angles in bicycle design, those are very important. All the dimensions, all the relationships between parts are there. I take that and I made some hard points in CAD, like, the bottom bracket area and all the tube diameters, certain things that are pretty critical to bike design. I made sure those were all in space. And then I brought those in as just simple tubes, simple geometry into Gravity Sketch, and just made all my volumes around it.
That's just amazing, because you're able to, literally take this rendering that you did and use that as a direct underlay for your CAD and for Gravity Sketch.
Totally.
And keep the design intent true through the whole way.
That brings me to, one of the ways to do that, and I'm going to do a planar sketch. You asked me on one of the questions, I'll bring it up now, like what 3 tools I use, or what tools I use the most, or what tools that really kind of benefit my workflow in Gravity Sketch.
Yeah.
One I want to show here is, the first one is the stroke tool. Let me get to material. Can everyone see my line here?
Yeah.
Cool. The beauty of this tool is it has just the right amount of control for me while still allowing me to be expressive. So usually the way I get my lines, I'm going to try and do a planar sketch. I do like to keep them flat to do like a 2D to 3D translation at first. So what I'm doing here is I'll make a plane in space. So my sketch is, I'm going to try and face it to the audience. I have a plane kind of facing the camera. Is if I'm making a curve, I can add control points as I go so that it has relatively flat sections, relatively tight radii or curves. Then usually I'll thin out the ends to get that kind of expressive stroke, and you can always add more points if you need to as you go. And I've learned that the farther or closer the point, every 3 points are to each other, the tighter of the corner I can get.
Yeah.
So this is one thing I've been doing to really make the Gravity Sketch lines match my sketch lines, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then, once I have the right profile in 2D, this is a planar sketch. It's as simple as, let me edit that, take it out of planar. And then I can grab the points and go in any other dimension, while still keeping kind of the design intent line. So I'll usually start with this. I'll do a planar view, then just kind of literally start extruding the line in space so that you have the right kind of expressive shape, but it's actually a volumetric line that's taking up space in 3 dimensions. That's how I'll usually start my sketches.
Yeah, that seems to be a really effective way of working, is getting that sort of planar sketching, like you were saying, and using the points to, get it to as close as the original design intent, even the the acceleration of your original hand strokes and all of that, keeping that true, because you want that emotion, that style to carry through into your model, because I think that's a common thing that designers find, is that they'll sketch this beautiful sketch, but as after it's gone through the 3D pipeline, it kind of becomes this bland or sterile version of what you originally designed. And so keeping that emotion through the 3D phase is challenging.
Gonna get out of planar. So one thing I can do here, can we zoom into this frame?
Yeah.
I want to show you one of the
we
more
can also
expressive...
blow this up too if you want.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, just make it real big.
Like the defining sketch line that really makes this design. And I'm going to try to, so if you can follow my hand here, this line that goes down and has a super tight band, and then a little kink, and then kind of wraps around and disappears over here. That was kind of the design intent line that drove this whole thing. So this is what I started with, and then just built all the surfacing around it. I wanted to make sure that was really sharp. And you can see how it just really relates to the form. And this is a good segue to start showing how I went from just a line in space to then surfacing to then volumetric shapes. So from this, I would then move on to create some surfaces. Usually I will do it with either the bridge curve or just the point mode. And the beauty of it is the curve, as I create it, the philosophy of a curve or a surface tightening is pretty much the same, where if you have 3 control points around a shape, then they create a tighter band. And just the ability to, grab those individual points and do very unconstrained kind of adjustments until you really get what you want. It's pretty awesome. I'm not really thinking about the sketch dimensions that are driving this curve. At this point, I just want to get a surface out and make sure the highlight is what I wanted. So yeah, being able to move these points, all the control point curves that guide a surface are awesome. And that's always going to be the same as long as you have the model going. There's nothing set.
Yeah, that's what I found too. That's just so powerful that I can just go into in an edit mode here because people can see these.
Mm-hmm.
They can't see the points when you do it, unfortunately,
Okay.
because I'm the one streaming.
Sure.
But they can see them, and so just to be able to do this, where I grab the point and I move it around just like that and position it exactly where I want it. I mean, it's so much time saving, I feel like.
Yeah, and another thing as industrial designers that at least I deal with on my field is surfacing is crucial, and part of getting that surfacing right is how the light hits that surface. So now I would say a pretty recent add-in is with the environments, being able to see, I don't know if you can see this, but control the light and control where the highlights go. You have a flashlight where you can actually exactly point the light to where you want it to be coming from and get reflections in your surfaces, all these other lighting setups that you can do to instantly check your surfaces to make sure there's no kinks or weird edges or creases happening.
Yeah, it's that's something that's been great and is what you just said, being able to read those surfaces. The HDRI and then as well as the gradient, I think helps with that as well. I just have a question for you.
Sure.
Out of curiosity, and this is kind of more towards the end of the interview that we do typically, but I'll ask it now.
Sure.
Is there, as far as the lighting and the materials, are there anything in Gravity Sketch that you would desire that would help you more with being able to evaluate surfacing? Did you have any thoughts on that at all, or?
Man, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about it much. I would say just I definitely wanted some kind of HDR environment up until this new update came out, and that just was a huge improvement to me being able to review these models. The zebra striping I do quite a bit. Are people able to see if I change? Can we demonstrate that somehow on the screen?
Yeah. So
if we change the environment.
Let's you are king of the scene at the moment, so you can change the environment. If you make this reflective like you just did and do zebra, it should work.
There we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was crucial to making sure that I had a very flowing head tube that then transitioned to those really sharp edges without any creasing or any weird highlight distortion or no kinks really or anything like that. And this really allowed me to see that pretty easily, that the surfaces, as long as you're working in that sub D modeling, they just work. There haven't been many issues for me when it comes to that part.
Yeah, it's a great way of seeing those kinks, as you said, and knowing
Mhm.
exactly what the surface is doing. Because it's kind of weird when you're working on something, you think it's going a certain way, right? You know,
Mhm.
geometrically or whatever. But then you change the lighting or move the. For me, sometimes I move the flashlight, and I see,
Yeah,
oh, there's a
exactly.
kind of a weird bump there, and I was like, I didn't even see that before.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, another thing with this is being able to look at it from angles that you would actually see this object once it's produced, once it's in real life, that you really can't get or achieve and through a computer monitor, right? If you do, it's kind of falls flat sometimes. And I would say, especially for things that are bigger than your screen. So a lot of the objects I design are bigger than a computer monitor, and that's where Gravity Sketch has really been a huge aid and a huge improvement to my tools, is being able to visualize something in its full scale without having to shrink it down or enlarge it to really get the real scale, the real size of what this thing will be when it's made.
So I'd like to ask you. You may have touched on it briefly, but I know that a lot of people have questions around this.
Mhm.
Your workflow for designing at scale in Gravity Sketch, does that come
Sure.
from importing your CAD geometry because it's scaled, and you?
Yes.
What's your? Just talk a little bit about your.
Sure, absolutely. So I will do, like I mentioned before here a little bit, the geometry has to be right. Let me see if I have a geometry photo I can bring in. I should have that. Here's one. Yeah, perfect. So bikes especially, and I'm sure it's the same with many products, but angles, dimensions, and relationships are pretty much everything for fit and performance. So I'll get these right first. Now this is from a competitor, but I'll, you know, reference who's doing what. Then we create our own based on this. Then the sketch will come from that. So this is kind of the design intent sketch. And if you can see very faintly, I still have the dimensions underneath. So it's not violating anything when it comes to head tube angles, seat tube angles, where they meet the down tube, or clearances, or because all that matters as to how somebody's going to fit on this bike. You know, it's all real world constraints. So this sketch is pretty much at the right scale, at the right dimension. From there, I'll create these hard points, like simple tubes. Like there is usually a, let me bring up another annotation tool. Yeah, I'll make like a little cylinder that's based on the bottom bracket. Actually, I can just make a cylinder. You know, I'll make these things in CAD in the right place at the right scale. And then when I bring in that model, it's all dimensioned correctly. I should be able to bring in, that's another beauty of these Gravity Sketch rooms. You can pretty much bring in whatever you want. I think I have the hardpoint model that I used to make that file. I can bring that in real quick here, just so everybody can see it in real scale. I don't know if they'll be able to see it, but I forget what you call it, like the prefab import preview area.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, this little box where if you bring anything here, perfect.
I can go ahead and show that. It's basically if you go here to prefabs, and you it's this gray box off here to the right, and so you can either take a model from your prefabs or from your imported models, grab them, and place it into this box, and that will bring it into your scene at scale. So you can see over here our mannequin that's ghosted in here.
So I brought in here. You can see that.
Yeah.
These are the hard points I used to create that bike frame right there.
Very cool.
So everything is already kind of there. The bottom bracket threading, the rear axle, the size of the tires and wheels, because clearances are a big issue when it comes to bike frames. So all of this was created in a CAD program. I brought it in at, this is kind of the real scale. We're going to 1-to-1.
And so, like you said before, anything you make, you know, with the bike frame, as long as if it's fitting perfectly around this
Exactly.
model, this geometry, then it's going to be correct and true to life.
Right. And obviously I blew this up so we could, like you were saying, to look up close, but I would say the biggest thing is make sure you're modeling the right units. I use millimeters, and that you're when you import it, to use that little preview import window to get the right scale, get the right orientation, and get the right up axis. Make sure it's correct. So just do your homework, and set the model right. And then that way, when you do either imports or exports and back and forth, I do quite a bit of back and forth. There's not going to be anything lost in translation there.
Do you ever sketch in VR first? Like, I know you have these renderings here. Do you ever try? Do you ever do any sketching or exploration before you go to the CAD and Photoshop portion?
Some things that I've done but it's definitely more loose. I like to be a little bit more constrained. I know my strengths are in hand sketching. I definitely learned through
Awesome.
2D. So most of my work will be doing that and then recreating that sketch in a 3D environment. But one thing I've been doing more for fun, or I have in the past, is sketching furniture and chairs and other things that are less related to my actual workflow and professional work. So for that, I'll just go ahead and start sketching shapes and volumes and getting something out. Whatever it is, and I'm doing a crude job here, but
this is great.
and obviously you can add to it too, right? That's another beauty of us both being here, or like annotate something.
I can just grab the stroke that you just did, and I can pull these
there you
around.
Go. Nice.
I'll answer, I know there's some questions on here about co-creation. So some people are asking, is this feature part of the core program, or is it part of the pro package? So co-creation right now is only available to businesses and educational institutions. So if you're interested in finding out more about co-creation or want to use it, just go to our website and contact us through our website to try out co-creation if you're a business or if you're a school. So unfortunately, it's not available to individual users at the moment, but yeah,
it's coming. I hope it's so. Touching on that, one thing that all of us, due to this new world and circumstances, a little bit more isolated. I do miss the studio environment and collaborating with other designers and being able to be in the same room, working on a prototype or just riffing on the design and doing productive feedback in front of a 3D model. And by that, I mean a physical model. So this is probably the best I found lately, way to collaborate with other people, or either just get feedback on your work. Is being in the same environment, because I can see what you're looking at. I can see the areas that you're focused on, and then just doing annotations on top of that or other things is just been fantastic.
Yeah, it's nothing like being in, even if it's virtual in a 3D space where somebody can just take a tool, stroke tool, and you're trying to describe some sort of surface or an angle, and you just you say, hey, like this, and then somebody's like, oh, okay, I get it, and there's no questions asked. You understand immediately what someone's talking about.
Right. Oh, I get it. Okay, I'm going to do that to my model or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Of the sort.
Well,
and then lastly,
sure, go
I'll move
ahead.
on a little bit. I want to just touch on a few other.
Please go ahead.
Since these were the way I had this put together, more exercises to get used to the tools and the workflow integration between my programs. I do want to share a little bit of some actual client work that I've been doing, which
awesome.
I really enabled by this tool, and I've been, I really wasted no time using VR to build these parts and these models, and get them to a production level design intent. This is a Belgian company called Berg that I've been working with. Their focus is mostly on lightweight racing components, aftermarket components for race bikes. But they recently asked me to help them design their own bike frame. They really wanted to get their own that they could build that with their parts that they already make out into the world. So this frame right here is pretty close to the production model that will be coming out. Zoom up close. So this one I had very specific factory-driven design constraints when it came to diameters of tubing and clearances
Wow.
and geometry specs. So this is, full production intent CAD. The majority of it came from getting all those hard points and all those specs in a CAD program, but I have been using it quite a bit to do one-to-one scale checks and making sure that everything's right. Also for visualizing the surfaces, using the zebra striping to make sure the lines fade correctly, using the environments to check like how else is going to look outside, how is it going to look, in a studio or in a factory or in a sales floor, and just really evaluating those things.
Wow. It looks really good.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully, I think you can see some inspiration of my kind of design language around the head tube area here.
Yeah.
From the other one that I showed. I was really trying to get that made, and I partner with the right people to make sure that it's something that is finally going to be available out in the world, hopefully eventually. And we're working on other components as well. Like these are a one-piece handlebar set. This one is a little different because the entire initial model came from Gravity Sketch. So the design intent of how I had these fade lines and everything.
Wow.
This little like scoop, how I did that. Oh, make sure I'm on the right layer. Yeah, this little like surface intake that's not only adding a little bit of design interest and differentiation, but also strengthens the part quite a bit. This I started with a complete model in Gravity Sketch. All I brought in were basically tube extrusions that gave me the right angle. This angle for the back sweep,
yeah.
as well as this dimension and this dimension. Those I brought in, but the whole shaping was made in Gravity Sketch. And then I took that Gravity Sketch surface and completely rebuilt the model in Fusion 360. So that's basically using the Gravity Sketch model as a 3D underlay. Now my whole career I've worked with 2D underlays and sketch underlays, but this makes it so that I can make a 3D volume, get the design intent I want, and then I'll just recreate it using surfacing tools.
Wow.
The thing with that is, with production CAD, sometimes you have to have a lot of things that are moving, and the bolt dimensions will change, or some hole will need to be bigger. So these cut surfaces and things that are removing material, especially, I really had to have those as parametric models. So as long as the intent was made in Gravity Sketch, I was still able to create a fully functional parametric part.
Is there any? I'm just curious. Is there anything, tool, function in Gravity Sketch that would help make this process even more streamlined with these types of dimensions? Like you're saying. I know you were saying that you need to work with a parametric model with some of these tight constraints. Is there anything that you could envision Gravity Sketch helping you out with in that workflow?
Definitely, for sure, with measuring stuff. A lot of the things I do are hollow tubes, and I need to measure center to center quite a bit. So maybe some way to do measuring snaps. If I'm going to measure this diameter or measure from the center of the diameter to the outside diameter center of this tube over here, I'm just giving you an example, maybe to be able to grab the measuring tool and snap to the circle and know that I'm looking at the center of it. Something that CAD tools handle a little bit better is, I would love to have that feature.
Amazing. Yeah, we have had some feedback similar to that as far as just more dimensionality, more measuring type tools. So
this one imported a little weird, but that was a circle. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, sometimes if geometry is still loading, it
looks
comes
like
just as a cube.
Hilarious. But another set of handlebars that I did in Gravity Sketch, really to test out the surfacing and how lines will fade where they need to.
Yeah, it seems like just a really awesome workflow of just like what you've been doing, where you bring in these reference points and you have this defined angle here, and you have those sort of laid out, so that those are true, those are what are necessary for the final product, and then you can just be free
this angle,
to explore
this
the
diameter.
surfacing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd still like to do a little bit of constraint work at the beginning,
Yeah.
outside of Gravity Sketch, bring those in so that I know any surface or any sketch line that I create is going to
Yeah.
be true or, usable at some point.
Well, it's almost like it makes the gravity sketch process even more fun because
Hmm.
you're not worried about, is this the right angle? Like, it looks good, but you're like, I don't know if this is actually going to be comfortable or if this is making sense. But
Right.
if you have those reference points like you've done, then you could just be free to explore the surfacing and how it
Exactly.
transitions and all of that.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
Amazing.
And yeah, I'll move on a little bit after this one. And the last project that I kind of fully baked out that I want to talk about here is another kind of side passion of mine that I've been trying to really get into more production level is these canine prosthetic ideas that I've had for quite a while. So I finally, using Gravity Sketch as a pretty integral part of it, created a full assembly model of it. This is several rounds of back and forth with Gravity Sketch surfacing as well as traditional CAD surfacing and assembly. This is more from a CAD export, but I'm still like to bring it in here to do evaluation from different angles and look at things, in different perspectives that a
Wow.
mouse or certain view sets just really won't give you.
Wow.
The
This is
beauty
so cool.
of this project here, if you want to look at this image, I did take a screenshot at some point of the evolution of this one. And this one is one where I did start with a 3D sketch, a gravity sketch on the left there, sketch line. So yeah, the whole kind of idea came from that. Then I turned that into surfaces using the volume tool, very roughly, just kind of getting things in space.
Yeah.
Then I turned that into more refined lines, and then finally into some surfaces. And this guy is the one that I took into CAD as a 3D underlay, and I rebuilt all the surfaces a lot more cleaner, but I didn't have to worry about how are they going to really look in 3D or from what angles, or at that point it was all kind of figured out in Gravity Sketch already.
Wow. Yeah, I've been seeing you post this one lately, which has been really cool to see. Yeah, and so what brought you into this? Sort of, because you said it was like a side passion of yours. What brought
Yeah,
you into it?
I've always loved dogs more than pretty much any other animal. I have a doggy in the studio. She's always with me. And one thing I noticed a lot is I have a lot of experience with moving parts, mechanisms, assemblies, and lightweight components for mobility, all of that stuff from the cycling world. I really wanted to see if I could apply that knowledge to a different field. And, it brought me to this where I can see where it really having an impact. I'm using the same carbon and CNC materials and applications to really create a concept that, in my mind is something viable. It's just opened me up to new possibilities. Luckily, I've been talking to some big players in this industry, hopefully trying to make a collaboration happen soon to get some of these things made or, onto some actual animals that really need them.
Wow.
It really makes a difference. It really improves their quality of life, their stability, their mobility,
Yeah.
and just overall happiness. So for both the animal and the owner. So if this is one thing that I can have a lasting impact on, I would be pretty happy.
That's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some honest work here. It's really cool too. It's really cool though. It's also just cool looking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I definitely came at it with a bicycle industry approach as I think the closest that I saw were, Olympics sports prosthetics or, very high end performance prosthetics. I've seen most of the advancements in this industry, at least, have to do with 3D printing and not really aesthetics as much. They're just kind of getting as many out into as many dog owners as possible, which is a fantastic goal. But I just really wanted to look at it from a more kind of design finesse aspect. And, this wouldn't really be that much harder to produce or manufacture than other things that are out there. It's just bringing in existing technologies from other industries, especially outdoor, sports and performance into,
I mean,
you know, a more noble side of things.
to me, it just makes sense. I mean, we're already doing so much innovation with human, prosthetics and bionics and all of that. I mean, it only seems to make sense to do the same for animals with disabilities and
Yeah,
missing limbs and things like that.
for sure. So, for example, the closure system is from something that's really it's a BOA type ratcheting closure that's used a lot in cycling shoes or hiking or even snowshoe or
Yeah.
snowboarding boots. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to bring in things that I have experience using. All the hardware is standardized T Torx keys. So T Torx screws. Sorry, I got a little tripped up. But all the hardware that I use, I actually found on McMaster, and I use actual hardware that exists. So everything is pretty feasible. The foot would be CNC machined for huge durability. The only things that I envision being custom or 3D printed would be the boot area here that interfaces with,
Right.
each dog has a different problem area.
Yeah.
So whatever that is for each individual animal would change. But, all the other components could be a little bit more using that streamlined mass production knowledge from my industrial design career.
It's so awesome, and you really designed it modularly, so you could. It looks
Exactly.
like you could really change out each of these parts for
Exactly.
a different size or a different material.
Exactly. So my idea was, this is a carbon fiber tibia or the bone or, the leg part. That could really vary in length depending on the size of each dog. This area is based on like where their tendons lie to get the right mobility. So I was thinking of a way to break this, make it so that the foot would have some kind of suspension, where they're running or moving. And that's adjustable through a tensioning system up here. So I was really thinking of it in a functional and modular way, for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's so cool, man. Cool. I think it's only a matter of time, really.
Yeah, hopefully, and this is the beginning. I definitely have a lot more thoughts on this and other foot modular ways to attach it or to tackle different scenarios or even different animals at some point.
Someone says on the comments, "This is rad, Fed." So,
right on.
Yeah, thank you everybody who's watching. Well, this is just excellent, Fed. Thank you for showing us this work. Yeah.
Sure.
It's beautiful, and it's just super educational, for me and definitely people watching, to just like integrating that process of VR, working in VR, 3D, and into the more like established traditional pipeline of industrial design and getting things to be like, I think that's some of the questions that we have actually in our community is like, how do I take something out of Gravity Sketch and make it actually like usable, in the real world? And you've really, I think it's obvious that you found just like that perfect integration.
I mean, these are keyshot renderings from CAD assembly that came from the Gravity Sketch models. So as long as you figure out a way to integrate all those, there's really I haven't found any hiccups in the process or any stoppage points, like any blockages that prevent me from displaying the work the way that I want to display it. Of course, it takes, effort and research on your end, but on the software side, there hasn't really been anything stopping me.
That's great to hear. That's awesome. Well, I'll just open it up to just this question, and we kind of already touched on it a little bit, but I'll give you a chance to give any final thoughts.
Sure.
Which is, are there any functions or tools or wish list items that you've had for Gravity Sketch besides what you've mentioned already?
Totally. I would say at first, I really wanted this to function like a traditional CAD program. I wanted to do extrusions based on sketches and really dimensioned features that I could control. But the more I use it, the more I realize I don't want those things in here. This is more for unconstrained creation and volume generation. I can get those on a computer if I really want them to, and then I can bring the model back in. So I've been I would say I've been getting a little better at exporting and importing back and forth, and just doing it quite a bit to get the desired solution. So maybe something in that area. I know the export, but it's already improved so much from even a couple of months ago. Like the import gimbal or the gizmo, um, getting the right dimensions and seeing in preview of what you're going to import before you do. Using landing pad to put in my models in there, and then just they show up here instantly. So the translation between programs has been amazing. It's getting better. Every update has so many new tools. Sub D really changed things for me, to just allow me to create pretty complex surfaces, really, without having to do a bunch of individual surfaces and then figure out a way to stitch them later. That's been fantastic. I would say before you try and see what's missing, just really get competent with what's here, because there's so much, and by the time you get good at what's there, the next feature will come out.
That's a really good point. That's actually a really a good point that we've been finding, and I've told you this earlier before we went live, that we've just been discovering even some of the basic functions and tools that people aren't aware of in Gravity Sketch. So, anybody that's watching and you feel like you're new to Gravity Sketch or you've never tried it before, go and check out our videos on YouTube. We've covered so many different workflows and tools. And like Fed just said, if you spend enough time and get really good, by the, before you know it, there'll be some new functions and features. So, and that's totally true. And, well, thank you very much, Fed, for sharing some of your thoughts there. It's very valuable.
Very welcome. Thanks for putting this together.
Absolutely. And it's been great just getting to know you and meet you a little bit.
Yeah,
and
same.
And that, I think that's one of the fun things is meeting, designers and artists, and it's tough right now, in this time, and so it's great that we can bring it together, virtually somehow. So, but one thing I want to ask you is,
Sure.
As we kind of close off here, is there anything? Well, you're working on this right now, so I was going to ask, is there anything coming up that you're that's coming after this, or that you're working on that you want people to stay tuned for, or just give you a chance to talk about anything you're going to work on soon.
So I do have a few products dropping very soon. I can't say much due to confidentiality,
Sure.
And client agreements, but some really cool stuff in the bike world in the next couple of months. So definitely stay tuned. I've been working with some awesome kind of innovative companies on the bike end of things, and the fruits of our labor over this year especially are going to start dropping very, very soon. So if you like to see updates on that, you can check me out on Instagram, Fed Rios Design. I do quite a bit of posting there. Also, if you want to see how I can help your design team, or your company integrate VR into your workflow, or how I do it, or just want to chat about potential work, you can reach me about that directly through my website, fedriosdesign.com.
Awesome.
I have a form there. But I would say my closing thought would be, if you're a designer or an artist or a creative person and you haven't tried VR yet, just try somehow to get your hands on a VR headset and get into Gravity Sketch and doodle in here. It was really mind-blowing. That first time I did it, I was sold. It's just something that's really hard to explain. It's getting better and easier to explain and show what it looks like from our perspective. But at the end of the day, you really do have to put on a headset and try it. Headsets, luckily, are getting smaller, more accessible, more comfortable. So all those things are just going to be better and better. And it's only been, a couple of years since this technology really became consumer friendly. So I can only see it getting that much better.
It's true. The timeline has been very fast. So it's I can't even imagine what it will be in even the next 2 years. If you could just give some parting wisdom from an experienced designer like yourself, whether it's about design or just a broader look on things. I know I didn't really have this in the questions for you, but if you had anything, any parting wisdom or something from your experiences that you'd like to share with everyone.
Yeah, that's good. And I can say from experience, maybe wasn't the best at practicing this, but stay engaged, make connections, talk to other people in the community, find others that have common interests, and reach out or find a way to see if you can make a collaboration happen or do side projects and things that interest you, like this kind of stuff. You never know where that's going to lead or who it's going to put you in touch with. I would say the beginning of the pandemic was a little hard for my creative output. I'm sure it was for a lot of people. And there were a few months where I wasn't doing too much other than just work or trying to find work or looking for work. And that was pretty stressful. And my creativity definitely took a dip. But luckily, you know, that's something, if we all have those funks, we can come out of them. And the only way to do it is just to keep creating or making stuff. If you're a creative person, the best antidote is to create, I would say. So make stuff. PR is just another way to make things for me. Yeah.
Awesome.
Connect, reach out, say hi.
Good words.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Fed, and thank you, everybody
This
who's
was
been
amazing.
watching. Yeah.
Thanks everyone for watching.
And we will, you know, please keep up with Fed. I've attached his links in the description. I don't know if I have your website on there, so I'm going to add your website as well.
Thank you.
And so yeah, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Fed, and we will see you next time.
All right. Bye,
Bye
everyone.
now.